me up high, you spread my
Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah Muhammad ibn Abdullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another beautiful session from the Ramadan Recollections, as we delve into the past, seeking inspiration from those victorious moments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed this ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. In the last session we left off on a bit of a cliffhanger, and we were speaking about the 25th of Ramadan, and it was the last 10 days of Ramadan, the 25th of Ramadan, and it was in the year 1260 Common Era, and it was in that area which is known as Ain Jalut, the same area which David had confronted Goliath many years ago, centuries ago. And it's this place where we're going to revisit again the two great armies that were about to meet. The Mongols, remember, they're the fierce warriors that leave a trail of bloodshed and destruction wherever they went. They were the undefeated warriors of the East, and they were now setting their eyes on the West. They'd taken over, ravaged every place they possibly could in the East, and now they were coming to the West. The Abbasids that were ruling Baghdad, with the sacking of Baghdad, Baghdad fell. Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayhi makes mention that when they entered Baghdad, that fateful Muharram, they only stayed there for 40 days, according to Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayhi. In that time, 800,000 to 2 million people had been murdered, massacred from their homes, out of existence, out of the pages of history. There were so many books that were over the rivers that the armies could ride over because of the books that were thrown into the rivers. The waters had turned blue because of the ink. And we saw that so many people had lost children, women. This was the sacking of Baghdad that saw the end of the Abbasid Empire. Thereafter we saw that the Ayyubids had already been taken out by the last of the leaders, Turan Shah, is been assassinated, and then these Mamluks have come in. This is where we left off, giving you the background history of who the Mamluks were. Those unassuming young military slaves that were taken in, trained to the best of their abilities, the sharpest shooters, the most eloquent in language, the ones who had been taught of the mind, the body and the soul. And these were the ones who had assumed now power. If there was anybody that was going to stand against the Mongol invasion to stop them from spreading out into the West, it was only the Mamluks that had to do this. But who would dare step forward against these Mongols, the undefeated ones? They sent the message that they've taken Baghdad, now they've taken Damascus and Aleppo, Halab, and all of them places have now been taken. Now they set their eyes. They sent an envoy of the Mongols to the Muslims, saying that there's only one way, resistance is futile, you must absolutely surrender in order for you to be saved. And it was that time where the two Battals of this time, Battals means heroes, the ones that we need to have resonating in our minds and in our hearts, that we speak about. Qutbuddin and Baybars is going to be number one. The other one we speak about is Muzaffar, is going to be Qutuz. Muzaffar, Qutuz, rahimahumullah ta'ala, may Allah be pleased with them both, are going to be showing their absolute military excellence. Because as soon as they've killed this envoy from the Mongols, Hulagu was the leader of the then Mongols, but he left Damascus and he put Qitbuqa in charge of this army. And when he took this as a declaration of war for his envoy to be actually killed when he was supposed to deliver this message to them. And this was something which was unheard of. Nobody had ever stepped to these Mongols. Now things are going to get tough. So what the excellence and brilliance of this Qutuz does, that he starts off with a few skirmishes, but what he's going to do before any of the skirmishes happens, he gives his epic khutbah, and what he does, he goes on the coastal routes to the Franks. He tells them, he says, you need to stay neutral in this. If we find out that you have aided our enemies, then you're going to be next on our hit list. And so what they do, they calm the Franks, and the Franks basically keep out of this war. You do whatever you want. Let's see. We'll watch and sit from afar and watch the spectacle unfold. Then he goes and he makes a truce with one of the two factions. Like I said, there was the Bahariya faction that was headed by Baybars, Qutbuddin Baybars, and the other one is gonna be the Aybaks faction, and they're going to be by none other than Muzaffar Qutuz. They may not have seen eye to eye, but at this time they knew that unity had to be made. If you fight against one another, Allah will take away your wind from within you. And so unity was the key to winning this, and it is always the key. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. That you should hold fast to the rope of Allah as a unit, as one body, and never ever fragment, because Allah will take away the wind from within you because of this. And so unity wins and disunity breaks. And so they understood that no matter what our differences are, we need to put them aside for the sake of this impending attack that's coming from the Mongols. Now, rather than waiting for their invasion to come, what Qutuz does, he appoints Baybars to get small groups, and he goes and picks fights along the routes that they're coming on. So his mission is that he goes and he starts to provoke fights with the Mongols. Now the Mongols get enraged and they lay chase, and this is exactly what they wanted, because what he's trying to do is get their armies to come over this river into Ain Jalut, which is going to be modern day Palestine. And when they get to Ain Jalut, only to find that Qutuz and his armies are already waiting. Now Baybars, the leader, Qutuz, the leader, these two armies have met for the first time now on this battlefield, and on the opposite side these Mongolian tribes. Now this, what happens is the huge army. It is written in the chronicles of this invasion that there was 10 Mongols to 1 fighter on the Muslim side, and this is how the battle's about to take place in the month of Ramadan. Now, just to give it so for you to understand, when we're fasting here, we have considerably shorter fasts over here now this year, alhamdulillah. But just think the hunger, the thirst that they must be going through. They're fasting, and in the midst of all this now, they're ready on the battlefields, meeting this huge army that no one's ever won against. But Qutuz, he makes his epic khutbah, and he rallies the Muslims up, and what happens? They lock into battle. Now this would have been an absolute a trap for the Mongols, but the Mongols didn't get to where they were just by doing these things, impulsively chasing people. So what they did, as soon as they knew that they were laying chase, they were open to the fact that this could be a trap. And so they sent half of their army, kept them behind. Half of this huge army, that there was 10 to 1 Muslim, they had chased them into Ain Jalut. And as this battle locked in and they started to fight, the Muslims were actually winning at one point, but it only got to that point where this other army now came in, just as absolute backup, that they've taken another route, that they've come on the right side and one on the left side, and the Muslims have been surrounded now. This, what was looking like victory, is almost defeat now. Qutuz knew that they had to do something really, really drastic, otherwise the day would have been lost. And what's in the balance, like I said before, it was Islam that was in the balance. There would be no more Islam left in the lands. All the Muslim lands have almost been taken. This was the last stronghold. If this was taken, the West would have to deal with this Mongol invasion as well. There would be nobody to stop them after this. And so this is the reason why he takes his helmet off on that fateful 25th of Ramadan, and he shouts out, he says, Wa Islamah, Wa Islamah, Wa Islamah, O Islam, O Islam, reminding the people, what are we fighting here for? We're not fighting for name, fame, status, for money, for lands. We're fighting just for our survival against these and for the survival of Islam. And so what happens? This rallies them, and then he makes his famous dua, "Oh Allah, protect your servant Qutuz this day, and don't against the Tartars and the Mongols." And this is how he rallies the people up, and they begin to fight and they begin to push forward. And it was on that 25th of Ramadan, Allahu Akbar, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saw that he pushed the armies of the Mongols so far back on one side, the right side, that Baybars found his opportunity. And when we speak about heroes, he was a hero, that he went into the thick of it. As he saw that some were dispersing and moving back, Baybars went in. He took Kitbuqa, the leader, he captured him, brought him to his side, and absolutely killed him there and then. And this is the battle that's going to be taking place. But as soon as that happened, it took the wind out of the enemies, and they didn't know what they were doing. A long story short, this battle that day was the first time the Mongols saw what defeat smells and tastes like. They did not know what to do. They had to run back to Damascus. They had to run back eventually back to the east. This is how strategic this battle was. It was the 25th. Ibn Kathir rahmatullahi alayh, he writes in his beautiful history book that they met at Ain Jalut on the 25th of Ramadan. The Friday was. He says that day Allah granted the Islam and the people and its people victory. All praises be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how these battles were won. Allahu Akbar. Qutuz is not going to be, he's the one who almost single-handedly does it, not without the help of Baybars as well. But you see, these two leaders, people need to remember their names. These are the ones we say rahmatullahi alayh. May Allah ennoble their graves and increase them in their ranks. These were the ones that Qutuz, we see shortly after that he is assassinated from other factions within the Mamluks, but it's Baybars who takes this forward. Now what he does, he controls after this battle. You see them, all the fanatical crusaders that were coming in the lands, they was immediately dealt with. Thereafter he pushed forward with these Mongols one by one by one. He took them out of the lands that they'd taken. Even Baghdad was one day back into the Islamic lands as it previously was. Allahu Akbar. But now you see, one of the most beautiful things, the Mongols were the ones who ravaged, killed, spilled so much blood of the Muslims in them lands. All the libraries, irreplaceable books that they had burnt. You know, there was if there were a people in the world that didn't need any salvation, it was probably them, in the sense that they had done too much that they can even warrant any compassion. But a short while, a few decades later, you see that most of the Mongols have suddenly become Muslim. They have become Muslim. And you might ask yourselves why. And one of the things that our teachers would always tell us, and the books tell us, that it was the Mamluks who actually made them into Muslims. And now you might be thinking what I'm thinking, in the sense that battles after battles with them, so they compelled them to become Muslim. That wasn't the case. Wherever they went, they never ever pressured them into becoming Muslims. Rather, what they did at this beautiful point was they never ever lost hope in the Islam of them ones who were even the harshest things that they did, but they never ever lost hope that they would ever become Muslim. In fact, it was Maulana Najmuddin. It was Maulana Najmuddin from one of the factions that was the main instigator, if you will. He was the main person who was into his da'wah, and he would always call them to Islam. In fact, if we look, one of the princesses from that time, the princesses was married into one of the Mongols from the east. In fact, Beijing to be specific, and she'd been taken as this princess, married for political reasons or whatever you have, and taken from the Muslim lands into a non-Muslim land, Beijing. Now what we're speaking about, the forbidden city. If we go, whoever's been to the forbidden city, right next to the forbidden city, you can still see a masjid right next to it, right on the edge of where the wall of the forbidden city is. And you might ask yourselves, how can a masjid be next to their most sacred place of their religion? It was because this princess, who knew that she would probably never ever see Muslims ever again, she's probably lost hope of ever seeing any Muslims again, but she had a commission, a masjid to be built, and the adhan to be given 5 times a day, just so that she could hear the name of Allah. And by Allah, this to this day it still stands. Now what's interesting is this princess didn't just say, this is my fate, I'm not going to see Muslims again, I might as well just accept my fate and just carry on. She carried on giving da'wah and teaching people about the oneness of Allah and teaching people about the beloved Prophet ﷺ, until a short while later that full region had become Muslim, alhamdulillah, by the da'wah and the great hearts that they had, that they just wanted good for everyone. The Mamluks, because of their vastness and the compassion and the education that they had, were not just good in military warfare, but winning the hearts of the people, beautiful compassion that they gave, and opened their hearts and homes to these hordes of the Mongols. The Mongols then went on to become the Mughals. They became the golden hordes. They became the ones who then spread Islam in the glorious days, Allahu Akbar, in the Sindh province in India, Pakistan as we know it today. We have to remember these. Whenever the 25th of Ramadan comes, always remember that battle that took place at Ain Jalut with these beautiful heroes of our past. The one they call Muzaffar Qutuz and Qutbuddin Baybars. Rahimahumullah ta'ala, may Allah bless both of them, bless all those who sacrifice their lives for this deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give hamiyah to Islam. May Allah bless one and all. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our gatherings, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give victory to Islam wherever they may be, to bring peace and security and safety to the entire world. Ameen wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
You lift me up high, you spread